If you haven't been paying attention to Spanish football this season, you might have missed the two big storylines going on. The first is in northern Spain, where tiny club Girona are actually leading La Liga after 21 games. The other one is in southern Spain, and it's the one that we're talking about today because it's arguably even more interesting. The 7-time Europa League winners Sevilla are at serious risk of being relegated to the second division. Their past success and their recent failures all point to one thing: Seville being the best Spanish rebuild in FC24. In FIFA, their squad is actually quite good. They have a team of average players without much potential, but they do have very low wages, which all combines into a nice and easy rebuild if you've never done one before. It's actually quite unusual that the reason for a rebuild isn't actually the squad, but instead it's the tactics they've been using in real life. From looking through their players, I couldn't actually identify any kind of style of play that they should be using on the pitch, so figuring that out is going to be a massive part of your rebuild. We mentioned before that Girona are doing really well despite being a much smaller club than Sevilla. I kind of hid the fact that Girona are actually part of the City football group, but Sevilla are also part of an ownership group. They're at the top of the 777 group's hierarchy, a group that has Hertha Berlin, Genoa, Everton, Standard Liège, Red Star FC and Vasco da Gama all being feeder clubs effectively to Sevilla. The 777 group is one of the most shady groups out there. They have a history of relegations that seem to follow them around. I mean, they've only been managing clubs for 4 years in Europe, but Hertha Berlin and Genoa have both been relegated, despite both of these clubs being top division regulars the entire time that I've paid attention to football. This means if you want some realism, you'll probably be rebuilding on a tiny budget and trying to make the most of their connections with other clubs. Thankfully, with Sevilla, they are actually only minority owners, so if you want a big budget rebuild, I don't think Seville is going to be the team for you. Instead, the rebuild's going to be all focused around scouting. If you want to rebuild Seville realistically, you'll have to make the most of almost every single euro that you spend. It's important to keep trying to find underrated talents like Nianzou and Bade, so you can develop them and sell them on for huge amounts of cash. The good starting point of their squad and the fact that you have to make the most of your money is exactly what makes Seville such a good team for a FIFA rebuild save. If we move from the off-the-pitch drama to the on-the-pitch situation, you have a look at Seville and you'll be playing wide, slow possession football, something that I really think they're not suited for at all on FIFA. If you want to play in this way on FIFA, you need to have either very fast or very skillful wingers, but Ocampos and Suso are neither of these. I think they're actually both more suited to playing long ball. Both Ocampos and En-Nesyri are tall and can jump, but seriously, I can only really recommend you transfer list almost every single attacking player in this team and pick a style that suits them more. It could be typical Spanish Tiki-taka, or you could become a counter-attacking force with a lot of pace, or you could fully lean into the long ball style and sign some players who can actually pass the ball at the back. To help you decide, let's have a look at the squad in a bit more detail and suggest some changes for you to make. The goalkeeping situation is not in a good state, and that's one of the most important positions in FC24. Dimitrovic should only really be a backup. I used him a lot in the bald career mode save that I did a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't think he was actually that great, so we'll need to find a new keeper from day one. Anyone who's rated from 82 to 85 overall is actually quite realistic. If you're doing alright in Europe, someone like Aaron Ramsdale might be willing to join, but personally I'd just sign Keylor Navas for Season 1 and then go all in on Kepa from Chelsea in Season 2. The defence is where almost all of the potential is in this squad. I mentioned Bade and Nianzou earlier, but how could we not talk about Sergio Ramos playing centre-back? He'll be in the high 70s by the end of Season 1, down from his 83 at the start of the season, but the 1-year deal he's on really does work for you. You'll have to replace him, but you'll have enough time to look for a better option. If you're starting your save before he makes his move to England, then Radu Dragusin from sister club Genoa is literally the perfect signing for you. If he's already at Spurs on your save, then you'll have to try and find someone else, but someone in that mould of a young, high potential, reasonably fast centre-back is everything you need in that centre-back position. At fullback, Seville are actually in a pretty good position. Adria Pedrosa, Marcos Acuna and Jesus Navas should all be good enough for a top half team, and we do have way more important positions to look at instead. Okay, let's get into the main renovation of this team. I said you should transfer list every attacker, and I still think that. If you want to get back to winning Europa Leagues, I would even go as far as transfer listing every midfielder, because Rakitic and Soumare should probably be backups at the very best. It's also a shame that Oliver Torres never hit his 87 potential. In fact, he's never really improved at all. He's been 79 overall since 2015, and he's another player that you have to wonder how they would fit into any tactic. He's got good dribbling, sure, and his short passing's pretty good, but he's one of the weakest players in the game with 33 strength, and his 83 passing really doesn't cover up that total lack of physicality. If you can keep all three, then Torres, Rakitic and Soumare, they're all decent squad filler players, but I'd highly recommend that all three of them are replaced in your starting 11. For the more defensive player, have a look at someone like Federico Redondo. This Argentinian could become a really good box-to-box midfielder. He's got a good amount of pace, strength and technique. But if you want to be a bit more unrealistic, have a look at Gabby Veiga next to Redondo. He has the technique of Rakitic, but he's 21 and has potential to be the best Spanish midfielder on the entire game. If you want a little bit more realism than signing the hottest prospect who's just moved to Saudi Arabia, I would recommend having a look at Carlos Soler instead. PSG absolutely love to transfer list him in Season 1, so you can pick up one of the best all-around centre mids for about £15 million, which is just amazing value. For the more attacking role, I would go for Ukrainian Herhohi Sudakov because he looks like an ideal fit for the attacking mid position. He's got everything you'd want here. He's got high potential, 5-star weak foot and a decent amount of pace and strength. If you develop all three of these players right, you could sell all of them for 100 million each to Madrid within 4 years. Up front, Seville only have 4 players, En-Nesyri, Luca Bacchio, Rafa Mir and Mariano, and they're all tall but pretty bad for career mode. I'd probably keep En-Nesyri, but sell Mariano and Mir to find a better younger player. I like the look of Alan Obando, and he has the same tall player profile, and he can grow by 20 overall, so you can really mould him into either the top class target man, a world class attacking midfielder, or one of the best poachers the world has ever seen. I wish I could have gone a little bit more in depth into some of the squad weaknesses here like I did for Man United, but I have way less ball knowledge when it comes to Seville than I do the biggest club in England. Everything I've suggested today is purely with career mode in mind, so if you're a Seville fan, please let me know if I got anything wrong or if there's any players you think would never leave the club in real life. Now, I know I've mentioned it a couple of times, but you are also going to have to totally revamp the tactical situation at Seville. Personally, I would go for Tiki-taka, which, if you're not familiar with it, is a possession style of play that involves lots of short passing and quick movement. It does make a lot of chances inside FIFA, especially if you have players with Tiki-taka playstyle plus, because if you have 1 or 2 of those in your midfield, you'll be able to do a lot of first touch passes and make a ton of chances for your attackers just by wearing down the AI. With all the suggestions I made for transfers, it was with the 4-2-3-1 Tiki-taka in mind, because I think it would be the best way to not only sort of play in a Spanish style of football, but it's also similar to how Seville played a few seasons ago. Of course, after you've played a few games with the default team and decided who you want to sell and also get rid of, you could always try and do something like creating your own tactical styles, and player restrictions are also a really good way of helping you to rebuild a side. But hopefully with the suggestions of tactics, the suggestions of players, and also of course the suggestion of actually managing Seville, you'll have one of the best saves that you've ever had on FC24. Hopefully you enjoyed today's video. Sorry if I went on a little bit of a ramble here or there, but I just like sharing as much information, and sometimes it just pops into my head at the most annoying time. So thank you for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more rebuild guides and things like this, or just career mode saves, and I'll see you soon. Cheers and goodbye.